Hi everyone, my name is Utkarsh Amitabh. I work at Microsoft and I'm the founder of Network Capital, a global skill sharing and peer mentoring company. I also serve as a World Economic Forum Global Shaper. Today I'm here to talk to you about the recently released report of the World Economic Forum and the ORF. It focuses on the future of work. It's a subject that interests me a lot because I am personally very keen to understand what the future of skills are, how do we build capacity at a national as well as an international level, and how is it that we can develop a youth force of attacking the most pressing problems facing our countries through data science as well as community building. I think when we talk about the future of work, it's very important to understand the macro trends that are taking place. The first is that people are now going to live much longer. There's a research done by two London-based professors, and their book is called 100-Year Life. So there they talk about people born after 1998 or on 1998 have a very realistic chance of living up to 100 years. The second thing that they talk about is that companies, as we know them, are going to live for a shorter period of time. And the third mega trend is that whole notion of retirement is going to go away. People will work for much longer. So if you look at the traditional way skilling has been understood or how we learn new things, it's a short period of learning in the early years, followed by a long period of work, which is followed by retirement. But now when we talk about the 100-year life, the whole notion of reinventing oneself becomes especially important. As the report also talks about, the nature of jobs in the future are going to be very different, and that has been spoken about at length in the media. But the media also talks about things like robots are coming for your jobs and we should be prepared for it. And I think it's partly true, but partly not true as well. The whole nature of jobs are going to change the way as we know them. Notions of creativity, empathy are going to be sold at a premium. And things that can be mechanized, rote learning, are going to go away. I think this is a huge opportunity for us to augment ourselves and equip ourselves to deal with the problems of tomorrow. But I think to understand how this entire construct will pan out, let's go back to the classrooms. Yes, primary schools and what happens thereafter. In standard 10th, when I took the board examinations, I remember a question which was asked: what is the speed of light up till 8 significant figures? Now, I wasn't sure what this question was meant to do or what purpose it served, but it sure wasn't to build more innovation in the children or in the country at large. The same question when asked in UK or Nordic countries was, why is the speed of light measured up till 8 significant figures? So the whole shift from what to why is essential if we are to embrace the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution equitably and sustainably. Similarly, as we talked about, because there's going to be a premium on creativity, empathy, innovation, building with and from each other, or learning with and from each other. So the whole notion of teamwork becomes really important. Research shows that we learn most from people who are not like us. Now, the key question to ask is whether in our schools and colleges, are we incentivizing competition or are we incentivizing collaboration? At work, whether it's large corporates or startups, you will see that the people who rise up the ladder or have a disproportionate impact are those who are able to build bridges and learn and work with people who are not like them. And I think that's essential for the future that we are working towards. We live in a world where we are facing global challenges like climate change, the threat of a potential nuclear war, automation, as this report talks about. Now, a nation can have a strategy, but it's very important that nations work with other nations. So when we hear things like building walls and firewalls, I think that's fundamentally against how the work's going to be because they disincentivize collaboration and try and come up with something nationalistic, whereas skilling as a future of work by definition are international by nature. So on Network Capital, what we try and do is that we build communities that are fairly global in nature and think of it like a bank. In that bank, you're depositing skills, and then you can invest the skills just like you invest your money in a bank in different ways. So on Network Capital, you have mentor-mentee pairs that come from Iran, Israel, India, Pakistan, US, Russia, China, US. And we are seeing a profound shift. Young people from around the world don't necessarily care about nationalistic boundaries. They want to learn from each other. They want to build with each other. And right now, they need a platform where they can all come together, collaborate with each other, and build products and services that can solve international challenges. Because no one country or one institution can make an individual or a set of individuals ready for the future of tomorrow. But if you pool in all the strengths, if you pool in all the resources, you can. So I think first, in order to embrace how this future is going to be looking like, we need to make this profound shift from thinking just in terms of our nationalist boundaries to looking at a more global scale. The second is that we need to move beyond absolute competition to rapid or radical collaboration. Third, is it because the nature of work is going to change, we need to be able to inculcate mentoring and coaching both in school and in colleges, but also for people at work. As I shared earlier, in the 100-year life, we talk about how people will have to reinvent themselves multiple times, and it is easier said than done. It's one thing to say to a 20-year-old that, hey, you need to get into blockchain now. But you can't tell a 48, 50-year-old cab driver or a 48, 50-year-old truck driver, which happens to be one of the largest professions in the US, that tomorrow your job is going to be automated. You need to learn some coding and blockchain in order to be relevant in the future of work. I think those kinds of things are intimidating. I'm not saying they're impossible, but they're intimidating for sure, which is why the notion of mentoring becomes super important. Next, we need to realize that every single person in the world has something to learn and something to share. All we need is a mechanism to match talent and opportunities. For example, let's look at a beggar. We did an experiment in Bangladesh where we realized that beggars, by definition of their job or by nature of their job, are extraordinarily good sales agents. So instead of asking them to learn blockchain, although they are most welcome to try that as well, why not try and create the next set of sales agents from people who were beggars in the past? This experiment has been done in Bangladesh and turned out very successfully. So these people who were beggars in the past were trained to sell fortified curd. And because they were very familiar with the surroundings and the roads, because that's where they begged, they knew the people, they knew the landscape, and they were able to turn out and become extraordinary sales agents. So that's critically important to understand adjacencies. How can a skill in one sector with some amount of coaching, some amount of mentoring lead to new kinds of changes? Next, one has to realize that stories are inordinately important. One of the most defining features of how innovative a country is happens to be the kind of stories children were told when they were young. It's no surprise that almost all famous CEOs and CXOs point out to stories in their childhood that highlight the notion of innovation. For example, Jack Ma's favorite book is Alibaba and 40 Thieves. Now, I don't know whether he named his company because of that or not, but he has gone on record and said that this is one of his favorite books. Similarly, for Sheryl Sandberg, Bill Gates, they highlight these kinds of stories that played a disproportionate impact on how they think. Now, that's the kind of stories parents and teachers should tell them. They should not be obsessing over getting into one particular institute or trying to get everyone doesn't need to get into one stream. But how is it that you inculcate innovation and creativity early on in the curriculum and see how the magic unfolds? I often go to classrooms around the world, from India to Moldova to the US to LATAM. And when I ask children to draw something in a classroom, they often draw a mountain, sun, birds on top, and a river flowing down, and some grass, green grass. Now, we've also managed to standardize creativity. Now, that's a sad state of affairs. How can we need children to be able to invert rainbows and reinvent the whole notion of possibilities. The report talks a ton about how aspirations of India are changing and how young men and women are thinking around the world. What are their aspirations? How is it that they can reach them? But I think we should take inspiration from this report and do a deeper dive into how we can make these careers possible for them. How is it that we can channel the innovation into solving some of the macro challenges that both India faces as well as the world at large? I think India can be a huge test bed for innovation because we are home to diversity of all kinds. We are 1.3 billion people, half of them almost under 25, 26 years of age. So we have the demographic dividend work in our favor. And how can we channel that demographic dividend and convert it into demographic innovation at scale? In villages, I've been involved in building India's first smart village. I was part of that team that worked very closely with the government to make that happen. And I realized that there is enormous amount of innovation locked into Indian villages. Imagine if we could scale some of them at a national level and at an international level. What could it be? So this village is Harisar. It's in Maharashtra, and it used to be called the epicenter of malnutrition. And in 2 to 2.5 years since we brought internet and built a digital ecosystem there, Harisal has transformed from being the epicenter of malnutrition to now being featured in the Prime Minister's book of pioneering innovations. So that's the kind of possibilities that we can unleash if we attack the problem from the right way. To conclude, I'd just like to share three things that every educator, every institution, every corporate, every non-profit, and governments should think about in order to make India and the world ready for the fourth industrial revolution. They are the following. First, build a time bank that fosters skill sharing at scale. This time bank should be built just like a regular bank is, minus the NPAs and other things that have been inflicted upon us recently. But this time bank will be a national repository of skills, or even an international repository of skills. And just the way you invest your money or channel your money to yield returns on investment, you can channel the skills and through data science and through communities, you can actually pinpoint with a fairly high degree of accuracy what kind of skills will be relevant where. The second thing is that I'm thoroughly enthused by building a national as well as an international community of mentoring. In that regard, Niti Aayog's Atal Innovation Mission could profoundly change the way students learn in classrooms. So we've been partners with them for the Mentor India project. But now it's time to take the same lessons and learnings from the Atal Innovation Mission for schools and build the same in colleges and corporates as well. Because one has to reinvent themselves not just at one point in life, but multiple times. And to do that, you need to be able to have access to high quality of mentors at the right time. But the whole notion of mentoring is fairly misunderstood. In mentoring, we assume that there's somebody sitting on top who will dispense wisdom when you go away. I'm not talking about that kind of mentoring. I'm talking about peer-to-peer mentoring. And it's more like skill sharing at scale, where you have something to add, you have something to learn, and you're doing it with the community so that it becomes more engaging. And the third notion is that we have to explain to the voters, to the governments, to the corporations that change is coming. It might seem slower than we think, but it is very much here. For example, as the authors of the 100-Year Life point out, I think both governments and large companies as well as small companies should be prepared for the profound structural changes they'll have to make, not just in their HR policy, but also the way they form their overall strategy for the year or for the 5 years or 3 years, and see how they can integrate and incentivize learning in different shapes and forms. So I think if we are able to try and incorporate these three elements into the overarching structure that we're in, we can channel the challenges of India into opportunities of India. And we can not just build in India, but we can build for India as well as for the world. And I think that's the kind of mindset we need to inculcate in our youth leaders. So this is the first in a series of Future of Work podcasts in collaboration with ORF. And everything that I've touched upon can be found in the report that ORF and World Economic Forum have released. So you can check out orfonline.org. And for some of the additional insights and the research that I touched upon, you can check out the 100-Year Life. I also gave a TEDx on the similar subject of reinventing oneself. You can check that out as well. We'll be back for more. Thank you.